The economy is rough at the moment. Cost of living, food, electric. It seems like everything is becoming more and more expensive. And yet, the aquarium hobby is growing at a rate of 6 to 7% year on year. And at this rate, will double in the next decade. I've been thinking about it a lot recently, and I don't think it's just because of the fish. I think it's because of us. And I want to discuss that with you today. Let's get into it. Hello, my name is Harris Bard for Pond Life Aquatics and Tropical Fish London. And this is a sort of tangential video to the science series where I want to discuss some slightly less formalized subjects that are a little bit less scripted. And I was thinking of calling it fish philosophy. But in today's video, I want to discuss why, even though everything in this world is seemingly getting more expensive, people are spending more and more on aquariums. Now, I think there's a few reasons for this, but for my first thought, I need to explain something called Maslow's hierarchy. And I'm sure a lot of you already know what this is, but for those of you who don't, I'll put a graphic on screen here. And Maslow's hierarchy is this concept about the different tiers of human need. It works from the base of that pyramid, which is your physiological needs, your food, health, up to safety, through to love and community, through to self-esteem, things like respect, routine, and then finally on self-actualization, self-happiness. And although this seems weird for me to be explaining in a fish video, I think it fits really neatly into the idea of why people may be keeping aquariums more than ever. In the Western world, we largely, most of the time, sit into those top two parts of the pyramid, sometimes the top three, where we're looking for community and love that's not fulfilled at home. Self-esteem, so we're always looking for routine and discipline. I think that's why, personally, I believe that you've seen such a rise in productivity videos, in that grind mindset. I can only talk from a young man's perspective, but it seems like I'm constantly being bombarded with that stuff online. And then at the top of that pyramid itself, that's your artistic expression. It's something that I think previously would have been filled in society largely by religion, but that's self, that meaning in people's lives, is one of the most important things you can search for. I think the aquarium hobby fits really neatly into those things. I'll go up one by one. Love and community, where the aquarium hobby, particularly with the rise of social media, has a thriving community at the moment. Social media is flooded with fish keeping advice, with different things from the community. But more so than that, in person, going to your local fish store or any fish store for that matter, to go and get supplies, to go and talk to the staff to see what they have, that offers that nice little niche in that community part of the hobby. And I know personally what the aquarium hobby has offered me. Not only is it my job, but I have friends that we exclusively talk about aquariums. We love it. It really fills that niche for me. In terms of self-esteem, that's your routine, that discipline of maintaining an aquarium, going through your weekly water changes, if you are the type of person who does weekly water changes like myself, maintaining your plants, making sure your fish's needs are taken care of. That's your discipline, that's your weekly routine, that's that nice little bit just below the top, that's self-esteem. And then self, meaning. I find a huge amount of meaning from keeping aquariums, not just because it's my job, because you're providing for another living being. That stewardship, that research, looking into what a species needs and the best way that you can provide for them. And also that creative expression, creating an aquascape or maintaining plants, the same way that gardening does for a lot of people, gives them that sense of self, that sense of meaning. And this is reflected in people's buying behaviors. If you look at the data for what people are now spending their money on in the hobby, it's not just people whacking a goldfish in a bowl anymore. Those days, I hope, are firmly over. But the amount of money that people are spending is moving largely towards planted aquariums, particularly in the tropical side of the hobby. Planted aquariums, aquascaping gear, that is where people are directing their money. And I've noticed this in store. Since we've started doing things like in vitro, we sell a hell of a lot more plants, and we're selling a lot more nano species that fit nicely into those aquascaping niches. And you can see this online, where you have big channels. Some of the biggest channels in the aquarium hobby are things like empty fish tanks, tanks for nothing. It's those creative expressions that are doing the best. They are doing the most numbers inside of the aquarium hobby. And I feel like that's that part of self-actualization that people are striving for. Viktor Frankl, the man who wrote Man's Search for Meaning, if you haven't read it, it's an amazing book. He is the grandfather of logotherapy. He was a Holocaust survivor who, without going into an entire video essay of itself, believed that you should not strive for happiness. You should strive for meaning. And from meaning, happiness is a byproduct. And I believe that in a world where we're constantly confronted with the idea that life is meaningless, I fall into this habit sometimes where you're doom scrolling, you're seeing all of these terrible things in the world. We're told that our jobs are going to be taken by AI. We're getting paid less in terms of real wages. It's hard to find meaning in this world. I know for a lot of people, and I know it sounds ridiculous if you don't agree with me, aquariums offer so much meaning, at least for me. And I genuinely believe this is one of the strongest arguments for why more and more people are keeping aquarium. 20% of households in the UK, more I believe now, have some form of aquarium or pond inside of their home. But I don't believe that's the only reason. As I said before, we're constantly confronted with things on social media, things that make us feel stressed and worried. And I've talked about it on this channel before, but I do believe it has seeped into the general population's mindset that there are now growing bodies of evidence, studies to show how much aquariums can help with physical health, not just mental health. There's been studies done where people have been sat in front of aquariums and you can actively measure their stress levels coming down, their heart rate's lower, their blood pressure lowers. If you could put that inside of a pill without any side effects except for having to literally maintain an aquarium, it would be invaluable. Do people understand that in a world that is so stressful, having a blue space, is what it's called in the literature, inside of your home or near your workspace is so beneficial to your mental and physical health. It's incredibly important. And I think a lot of people are turning to aquariums for those reasons. It's also being used as medical interventions. I've talked again about studies on this channel where Alzheimer's patients have seen genuinely marked improvements when they have an aquarium inside of their homes. And there is a growing body of evidence to suggest that people with neurodivergence, and I think that's particularly interesting because there's more and more people being diagnosed with some form of neurodivergence, that not just the routine, not just the act of taking care of something else is able to help people self-regulate. There's studies to suggest that when you look at an aquarium that's beautifully planted and well maintained, it allows the brain to enter a state called soft fascination, which I have said before, I think is a beautiful term that allows the mind to actively unwind and reset. I may be paraphrasing that, but I love that phrase, soft fascination. So if you don't buy into those ideas, that the reason why people are spending more money on aquariums is because they're trying to find meaning in their lives, or they're trying to physically help themselves by lowering blood pressure and creating relaxation, or they're buying aquariums for therapeutic reasons, for either people in their households or for themselves, to create structure and allow themselves to unwind. Then I've got one final idea, and that is based on the lipstick theory. And if you haven't heard of the lipstick theory, it is the idea that during an economic downturn, which in Britain we are very close to, people don't stop treating themselves. They just downsize. During recessions, people still bought their lipstick. They didn't cut it out completely. They just stopped going through extravagances, went to smaller things. I think this is probably the weakest argument I have, because setting up an aquarium is largely very expensive. Although if you do want to see how to do it on the cheap, there are some amazing channels out there. People like Tanks for Nothing do wonderful things. I think keeping something like a shrimp jar is genuinely one of the best things I've ever done, and it's incredibly cheap to achieve, but I digress. I think aquariums, once they're set up, all the throat clearing aside, do fill that hole. It is the small indulgence that makes us feel normal. If you can't afford the big car or the holiday, being able to come in and buy 5 cherry shrimp feels like an indulgence, and also feels worthwhile. And I've seen it myself. I have friends who are probably spending way too much money on things that they don't necessarily need for their aquariums. Live food, CO2 injectors, plants, but it makes them feel good. It's the lipstick effect. It's the small indulgences that make them feel normal. And not only that, it plays into everything else I talked about previously. It allows them to feel meaning. It allows them to have that structure, that routine. It allows them all of those things. It allows them to physically de-stress. In some cases, it allows them to mentally unwind. So is it one thing that's driving growth in the aquarium trade? No, I don't think it is. But I do think it's a mixture of the things I've talked about today. People looking for meaning in their lives, looking for creative expression, looking to take care of something other than themselves, stewardship, to give the best life possible to another living being, to physically and mentally unwind, and to also feel like they're able to indulge in something in a world that is increasingly becoming harder to indulge yourself in. I could honestly do an hour-long video on all of the reasons it could possibly be that the aquarium trade is growing at the rate it is, while everything else seems to not be. But those were the reasons that I found most interesting, and the ones that I've been mulling over recently. If you enjoyed this video, then please do let me know in the comments below, or if you have any other theories about why the aquarium trade is growing so much more than the rest of the economy, let me know in the comments below. And if you did enjoy this video, then consider liking and subscribing, and letting me know that you want to see more of these informal, less scripted, less research synthesis videos in future. I had a few comments asking if I could talk less enthusiastically, and it is largely because I put a lot of work into the scripts that I filmed for the science series. And I still put a lot of work into this, but it is much more of a free flow and much more of my normal cadence. So I'm sorry if it's a little bit too slow for some people. I'll cite all of the sources that I mentioned in this video, including some of the studies that I didn't mention by name, in the description below. If you have any questions, feel free to drop us an email. Our email address is info@pondlifeaquatics.co.uk, and you can find all of our information at www.pondlifeaquatics.co.uk. aquariums.co.uk, or you can come and find us in store at 1 Finchley Nurseries, NW7 1AS. We'd love to see you. But for now, that's all from me here at Pond Life Aquatics, and I hope you'll join me again next time for this Pond